You think you know why humans started wearing clothes. Warmth, obviously, maybe modesty. Makes sense, wrong. Both answers are wrong. Scientists spent decades arguing about this, and when they finally found the answer, buried in the DNA of a creature most people find disgusting, it flipped everything we thought we knew. Here's the actual story. And I promise, by the end of this video, you will never look at what you're wearing the same way again. Let's start with something nobody talks about. For the first 200,000 years of human existence, we were naked, completely, and we were fine. Think about that. Our ancestors walked across savannas in 40-degree heat, ran from predators, built fires, raised children, did all of it with no shirt, no shoes, nothing, and they survived. Which immediately raises the question, if we survived naked for 200,000 years, why did we start covering up? The warmth argument falls apart immediately when you look at where early humans actually lived. Sub-Saharan Africa, hot, dry, sunny all year. You don't need clothes in that climate. So warmth wasn't the original reason. It came later, when humans migrated north. But by then, clothing already existed. And modesty? That's even more recent. The concept of modesty is cultural. It changes based on where you live, and when you live there. So if it wasn't warmth, and it wasn't modesty, what was it? Here's the problem with figuring out when humans started wearing clothes. Clothes decompose. A bone survives 300,000 years. A spear tip survives 400,000 years. A piece of fabric, gone in a few centuries, maybe decades. So how do scientists even know? They tracked lice. Not metaphorically, actual lice. The human body louse, the one that lives in clothing, is genetically distinct from head lice. They're different species now, but they weren't always. At some point, head lice evolved into body lice, and that evolution only happens when there's clothing to move into. Scientists at the University of Florida looked at the DNA of both species and traced back when they diverged. The answer? Approximately 170,000 years ago. That's when clothing was invented. Not because of the Ice Age, which came later. Not because anyone made a conscious decision, but because something changed in how humans were thinking, and the change led to wrapping themselves in material. Needles tell a similar story. The oldest confirmed sewing needles ever found are 90,000 years old, found in Morocco, made from bone. Someone 90,000 years ago was sitting down, carefully shaping a needle from an animal bone, with enough precision to thread it. That is not survival behavior, that is craft. Here's where it gets interesting. 170,000 years ago doesn't match what you'd expect. The first Ice Age migration, the one everyone assumes drove clothing, happened around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago. That's when humans left Africa and moved into colder climates. Clothing predates that by 100,000 years, so the cold weather explanation doesn't hold up chronologically. Clothes already existed before humans needed them for warmth. What was happening 170,000 years ago? Geneticists call it the bottleneck. Human population collapsed. We're talking fewer than 10,000 people on the entire planet. Maybe fewer than 1,000 breeding pairs. The species almost went extinct. The survivors weren't necessarily the strongest. They were the ones who did something different. Cooperative behavior exploded during this period. Tool complexity increased. Evidence of long-distance trading emerged. Shells from the coast found hundreds of miles inland. People who had never met each other were exchanging materials. This is called behavioral modernity, the period when humans stopped being just biologically human and started being culturally human. And right in the middle of this explosion of behavior, clothes appeared. Not because it was cold, because something shifted in how humans were relating to each other, and clothing was part of that shift. Not an accessory, not protection, a tool for connection and distinction. There's a theory that ties all of this together. Anthropologists call it the cognitive threshold, the moment when the human brain crossed from functional intelligence into symbolic thinking. Symbolic thinking means this: you can take an object and make it mean something beyond its physical function. A fire keeps you warm, that's functional. But a fire in the center of a circle of people used in a ritual, that's symbolic. The fire now means something. It represents community, ancestry, power. A hide keeps you warm, that's functional. But a hide with specific markings, worn only by the chief, that's symbolic. The hide now communicates something: status, authority, identity. The first clothing wasn't a coat, it was a statement. And here's the part that should genuinely mess with your head. The anxiety you feel about wearing the wrong outfit to a party, that's the same cognitive system, 170,000 years old, still running. When you look in the mirror and think, does this say the right thing about me? You're doing exactly what early humans did when they first draped animal hides over their shoulders. The clothes as communication system hasn't changed. The symbols have, the brands have, the trends have, but the underlying mechanism? Identical. You inherited it. You never chose it. It just runs. Every morning, every outfit, every choice. The ancient software is still loading. This reframe changes how you see everything. Clothing isn't protection. It's a language, and like any language, you learn it without being taught. You absorb it. You know instinctively what a suit communicates versus a hoodie, what a uniform says versus casual clothes, What bare feet means versus shoes in a certain context. You don't think about it. The decoding is automatic, built in, because 170,000 years of humans sending signals to each other through what they wore has wired us to read those signals without effort. Every morning when you get dressed, you're making a series of decisions about what you want to communicate. Even if you think you're just throwing something on, even if you say, I don't care about clothes. That's a communication too. That choice is intentional. There is no neutral outfit. The earliest humans figured this out before language existed, before writing, before cities, before any of the other things we think of as civilization. Clothing came first. So next time you open your closet and feel that small, inexplicable anxiety about what to wear, remember, you're not being shallow. You're running 170,000-year-old software, and it's working exactly as designed. New video every week. Subscribe if you want to know what else we got wrong about the world we live in.